I went up to a place called Lilydale, New York, which is a little hamlet filled with mediums. You don't have to be a medium to live there, but right, you do need to be a member of the Spiritualist Church to own property there. So while I was there, I decided to start working on this book where I had been a little bit lost about where to begin. And I was there before the season opened, and there was a mediumship training happening at that time. So as I was there, I was walking around all of these people who were training to be a medium, and I would be asked, "Oh, are you a medium?" And I would say, "No, I'm a writer." But then as I started to think about it, I was like, well, in a way, it's kind of like being a medium. You're sitting yourself in a space. You're opening up to some power or force that moves through you. You're trying to wrestle with ideas and spirits and bring some sort of message through. So in that environment, the gift that I received was the understanding of who my protagonist was. And she is the third ever newspaper woman in the world. Third ever newspaper woman in America, E.A. Howe. And in that time and in that place, I had this impression of that looking to the past, for me, could help me to make sense of the present so that I could reimagine a shape for the future. So this book to me, and this series, it's a series, is about taking the perspective of what is in the past that can help me understand what is happening to reimagine a optimistic future. As such, I would like you to imagine, if you will, what in this space that you are in right now would appear to our ancestors as magic, demonic, miraculous, and how much we can just take that for granted. From the lights, these little electrical candles that I lit, this microphone, air conditioning, and the sounds that we take for granted. My car is a magic carpet. The magic carpet of your car, yes. And then to kind of center yourself in this moment that we are currently in, this present moment of space and time, in this hotel, with these lights, with these sounds. And then to kind of internalize in your own mind the sound of your own breath, the sound of your thoughts. If your thoughts make a lot of noise, I know mine do. And if you can perceive it, the sound of your own heartbeat. Now, in the knocking, it's fall 1850. We are at a time here in America of great changes in ideas and technology. The telegraph, the cotton gin, the railroad, all are just coming into public use. 2 years ago, in 1848, two girls in Hydesville, New York, began talking with a ghost, and a new invention called the spirit telegraph was born. Newspapers shaped the political ideals of this young nation. A compromise has just been passed in Congress to allow new states into the Union that include an act wherein people in the North may start to see their friends, neighbors, kidnapped without due process and taken God knows where. E.A. Howe, the third ever newspaper woman in America, has come to the estate of newspaper magnate Horace Greeley to petition the New York Tribune to come out against the compromise. She will do whatever it takes to lobby him against the injustice of the Fugitive Slave Act, but he wishes to ask the spirits what they think, in particular that of Benjamin Franklin. Under the auspices of privately educating her, Horace Greeley is housing the spirit telegraph herself, 11-year-old Kathy Fox, who regularly channels his dead son, Arthur Greeley, from the other side for his very unwell wife. While E.A. considers herself a skeptic, witnessing Kathy channeling on a dark night has frightened her. Join me now as E.A. learns the secrets of how the knocking began. A ghost. I am startled, seeing an apparition at the end of the hall. A little phantom in a nightgown with a head made of tapered, glowing glass, like an oil lamp. It approaches slowly on bare feet that touch the ground. Miss Howe? If only I felt relief that it is Kathy Fox after all and not a ghost. Truthfully, she's more frightening to me at the moment. Miss Howe, will you sleep with me? I'm scared. Aren't you scared too? Of course I'm scared. Of her. Of whatever I saw come over her in that rocking chair. I would rather sleep with one of the copperhead snakes I used to find in the woods. I must sleep alone, I say. I have a habit of punching in the night, and I wouldn't want you to be on the receiving end. That is a terrible lie. Please, Miss Howe, she is not at all fooled. I've never had to sleep alone here. Miss Elliot always sleeps with me. It's important to learn to be comfortable alone. We can talk politics if you like. I tell myself to settle down. I am here on a mission. What I've seen tonight is nothing compared to the horrors that people are experiencing every day due to our own government. I'll tuck you in, I say. Now, what would be the most instructive way to tell her of the goings-on in Washington? My mind goes straight to Daniel Webster, who up until this year I looked upon as a hero. I think of the betrayal I felt at his oratory in favor of the compromise. What's that? What? That knocking? Oh, this knocking? My foot is jiggling, as it does whenever I'm trying to sit still. I know it's annoying to others, but now it strikes me as funny that she mistakes my toe tapping for spirit rapping. Oh, it must be a ghost, I joke, smiling broadly and not actually trying to fool her, simply lighten the mood. Is it a spirit? Once for yes, twice for no. I tap my foot on the floor and then again, not a spirit, then what is it? I'm clearly jesting. Is it my foot on the floor? Be careful. Kathy turns her face away from me. That's how you call death. That's just what my Aunt Clara used to say, that my foot was the part of me that was owned by the devil. I'd never been able to tame it. Mr. Splitfoot, Kathy murmurs. That's another name for the devil. Yes, so I've heard. It's true. Don't you know about me and my sister and Mr. Splitfoot? I don't. The lamp sputters and smokes, and Kathy begins to tell me her story. Peddler tells of his own murder through spirit telegraph, Kathy Fox, as told to and interpreted by E.A. Howe. Hell is no place to win justice. While Charles Rosna hadn't gone to the typical version of hell, there's endless suffering in hanging around where he'd been killed, outside his body. He had not yet made it to Summerland, so bitter was his spirit, and so vocal his protestations. Charles Rosna did not deserve to die. He had fled violence in a place across the ocean called Odessa to come and make his fortune in America as a peddler. He was a good peddler, young enough to easily bear the load of his trunk, old enough to discern the difference between need and want. He knew that to have something of beauty, even something as small as a thimble, was not a luxury, but a necessity. He had bright red hair, a giant set of easy smiling teeth, and blue winking eyes, but his most winning quality was his voice. He spoke in a pleasing, deep, vibrant tone, his accent slight enough to charm instead of confuse. He couldn't help but often to break into songs of his old country and songs of the new while showing off his wares, singing phrases and notes that stuck into people's heads and made them want to sing too. He made customers feel that each object he sold had a bit of enchantment. Most of the other peddlers stuck to the cities, but Charles knew it was the outskirts where the mothers most needed a ribbon of an unusual color, a pin with a butterfly, a special spoon for their toddler. In 1843, he was trudging up north on his way to Rochester when a little hamlet called Hydesville took his fancy, and he stopped at a small salt box home where the Bell family lived. Mrs. Bell fell in love with his thimble. She just had to have it. Sadly, she didn't have the money, though her husband would be back soon. Would Charles Rosner, with his smiling mouth, shiny eyes, and singing voice, come back this way another day? In 1848, Kathy and Maggie Fox, ages 9 and 11, moved with their parents from Rochester to Hydesville. Since they had moved that past fall, none of them had been granted a proper night's sleep. The house that they rented from Mr. Bell, who left town some 5 years past, thudded and bumped, knocked and moaned. No one could rest. Mrs. Fox cried upon waking, she was so exhausted. One particularly noisy night, the whole family unable to sleep, Kathy jumped out of bed and talked back to that which refused to rest in peace. "Mr. Splitfoot," she said, "do as I do." The wood beneath their feet knocked back in the same rhythm. "Mr. Splitfoot," she said, "are you a spirit? Rap once for yes, twice for no." "Mr. Splitfoot, did you live in this house? Once for yes, twice for no." "Did you die here?" Kathy suggested it must be a joke, a trick someone was playing on them. It was the wee hours of the early morning of April 1st, April Fool's Day. Mrs. Fox started asking questions. Mr. Splitfoot knew all about the history of the Fox family. It knew about the adult children the Fox parents had, about the decade-long separation of Mr. and Mrs. Fox due to Mr. Fox's fondness for drink, and that Maggie and Kathy were children of their second chance reunion. It knew the numbers and ages of all their children, including the one who had died stillborn. Mrs. Fox was familiar with second sight, having such powers herself. But Mr. Splitfoot had insight that only comes from the other side of the earthly veil. Terrified of the knocking ghost, Mrs. Fox sent her husband for the neighbors both east and west, north and south, and soon, there in the middle of the night, a small-town meeting was taking place in the haunted house, talking to Mr. Splitfoot, who told the lurid details of his death right there where the neighbors stood. Mr. Splitfoot was not his proper name, of course. He spelled it out for Kathy in raps on the floor as she spoke out the letters of the alphabet. Long into the night, letter by letter, knock by knock, he told his sad tale. His name was Charles Rosner, and he was murdered by the Fox family landlord, Mr. Bell. When he had returned that fateful day to Hydesville bearing the thimble, Mr. Bell invited him in. Mr. Bell was no fool, and he didn't like to be taken for one. He was suspicious of the peddler and his ribbons and bows, thimbles and threads. He didn't like how he heard Mrs. Bell singing bits of songs from the place. he had never seen, or the look in her eye when she talked about the man who came and would return. Most of all, he didn't like the pretty tenor of the peddler's voice. What he did like was catching sight of all the money this peddler kept in his trunk. For Mr. Rosner had been a big hit in Rochester. When Mr. Rosner was bent over, singing about a missing body, Mr. Bell crept up behind him with a knife and slit his throat. The knock stopped there, and Kathy panicked, for she felt a spirit coming into her body. She gurgled, grabbing at her neck. All the neighbors were horrified at the sight and sound of Charles Rosner trying to breathe and scream through the mouth and body of Kathy Fox. Maddie Fox, 2 years older and 20 years wiser, ordered the spirit out of her sister, instructing him to behave better. He did not need to take her sister's voice, for she had given him the chance to tell his story now, unburdening his spirit through the knocking. Subdued raps on the floor confirmed that Rosalind accepted this offer, and Kathy's own voice returned. It was up to Maggie now to finish him, drum out the rest of his story. Mr. Bell had placed a bowl beneath the man he had murdered to catch his blood, so to not stain the floor, though one could still see, in this light, the places on the wood where the dark drops had set into the grain. And so this is how poor Charles Rosner, who'd escaped the murdering mobs across the ocean, who'd come to America full of promise and songs, had been killed. When Mrs. Bell discovered what Mr. Bell had done, he promised worse for her. She vowed to keep silent. She helped him take the body down into the cellar, where Mr. Bell buried Mr. Rosner's body 10 feet deep in the dirt floor, along with the bowl that held his blood and the trunk that held his dream, minus the money and a single memento. Mrs. Bell would have her thimble. Kathy presses upon her thumb, speaking of Mrs. Bell's prize. That's how it all started. All of this. We taught Mr. Splitfoot how to use the knocking, and soon, all over this country, spirits were knocking in places we'd never even heard of, for people we've never even known. It has been 2 years since Kathy and her sister Maggie began speaking for spirits in their humble Hyattsville home. They are now ages 11 and 13. In the past 2 years, they've been simultaneously hailed as witches, frauds, prophetesses, inventors. They've been run out of towns, feted by luminaries, pursued by mobs, and the stars of sold-out shows where the spirits demonstrated secret knowledge to hundreds of people. They've transitioned from playing local halls and exhibitions to being put up by America's original showman, P.T. Barnum, in his hotel, knocking for more money than they had ever dreamed of for the biggest celebrities in the world. Yet Kathy insists they're nothing special. It's just that the spirits know us now and trust us. It is like a telegraph. Me and my sisters know the code, but anyone can do it. You could do it too. You would need to learn how to control your leg tapping, or all the critics would think that it's humbug and swear that that's how you were doing it. And then they would undress you so they could hold your legs while they say something like, "What do the spirits say now?" It's not something I would like to learn, I say. But don't you see, Miss Howe? If you learned how to do it, you wouldn't need me to talk to Benjamin Franklin for you. You could do it yourself. That's what you want, right? I don't want to talk to Benjamin Franklin. Mr. Greeley does. But what does that have to do with you then? Why are you always talking about it? Look, Kathy, how can I explain this without seeming like a horse's rear? Mr. Greeley doesn't care about what I know. He doesn't care about what I've seen or about my opinion. I need famous spirits to help me convince people to do what is right. She closes her eyes and curls into me like a cat. It's literally a matter of life and death, I say. If you can reach Ben Franklin, what he might say about all this, life or death for many, many people, do you understand, Kathy Fox? I just want to go home. She isn't listening. She is falling asleep in that way that children do, as quickly as kittens. She puts her thumb in her mouth. Home. What? Back to your haunted house and ghost of a peddler? Not there. Not anymore. Just back to my mother. My mother is my home. She falls asleep, sucking her thumb. Thank you so much for being here. I am so gratified by your presence and for lending me your energy and your attention. On July 14th, this first book comes out. It's about spiritualism, journalism, and the peculiar crimes of the American government. And I hope that you will join me on this journey. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Yes?
Will there be an audio?
Yes, there is an audio. The reader is fantastic, and it's not me. Believe it or not. But she is amazing. And when I heard her read it, I fell in love with her version of it. She's amazing and incredible. So, great audiobook version. And a hard copy and paperback. And of course, just the ebook version. Yes?
What are you working on next?
The sequel to this. Yeah, the sequel takes place in 1862 in Washington City, which was later incorporated as Washington, D.C., but at the time was Washington City. And whereas doing research for 1850 Turtle Bay, New York, finding those particular gems of information was a lot of digging and, dig. It's a deluge for Washington in 1860. There's so much information, and it's the beginning of photography, where there was a lot of cartoons and people were taking pictures of themselves. So there's photography of the area. There's a huge technological boom. People were writing letters, so many letters. So there's it's sort of like everybody, it seems, was there in Washington at the time I'm writing. So it's been much more, instead of digging, much more sort of, don't need that. A lot of stuff. I feel like I could write 10 books just about Washington in that year. Thank you. And any questions about spiritualism or anything about mediumship or the beginnings of that? Yeah. So I was raised very religiously, and in a very religious community, and faith was always a big. Everybody always talked about their faith and whether you had a testimony or you didn't have a testimony of this thing. But because the community was so insular, it was sort of like, this is the truth. This is reality. And as I started to age and I realized that what had been given as taking something on faith was actually a very disputed reality. I left that religion, but I was always fascinated by belief. And the more I age, the more I become more interested in what belief gives people versus what it takes away. And one of the things that I became so fascinated about the Fox sisters, who became the sort of beginning of this religion, which had much fraud and much fraudulence built into it, was also was the beginning of, they were some of the biggest abolitionists. One of the quotes I read said, not every feminist was a spiritualist, but every spiritualist was a feminist. It was a hugely progressive religious movement, and women who at that time did not speak in public were suddenly speaking in public, being taken over by the Spirit, which allowed them to share wisdom. So it was a very, so I became fascinated with like that idea. And then as an actor, going back and parsing out these two young girls and their lives and belief and what other people needed from them and what they got from it and the idea of performance. I've always felt as an actor, there is this sort of special thing that happens to you when you have a character and you're in a theater and there's some sort of magic thing that happens when that character comes to you. And it started to feel very much to me like I could understand what a medium does or what that feels like. And so I just had to get to know them better. And so I went to a medium. and I was like, can you contact the Bahr sisters for me? And tell me what they think about this. So it's just been kind of a fun, playful topic for me, but I love getting to learn about them and feeling this sort of, especially for Kathy, who is, Maggie has her own books just about her, but Kathy is a much more invisible. So I really wanted to excavate her stories. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing your presentation.